Hey there, learners. Welcome back to the eCoreAcademy e-learning platform. Thank you for watching this video. If you're viewing this through our YouTube channel, eCoreAcademy, and if you are, please smash that subscribe button and hit that like button on this video, as well as punching that bell to get notified on our latest posts. And thank you for watching this if you're watching this through any of our social media platforms, and of course, our website, eCoreAcademy.org. So today's lesson is all about introducing our geometry course. It's our introduction to geometry, our very new course. And it's all about taking a look at what our geometry curriculum offers. And of course, today's video is by me, AJay Raj, through, of course, our eCoreAcademy e-learning platform. And of course, today's topic, geometry, is going to be under the subject of math. So today we're just going to be introducing our geometry course, give you a bit of a sneak peek on what it's like, and of course, everything that we encounter, it includes, everything it involves, and all the materials that you're going to need for it. So let's hop right into it. So what is geometry? Let's get into the basic definition of what our course is all about, because it's important to have a purpose for it. So geometry is a branch of math that focuses on the measurement and relationship of lines, angles, surfaces, solids, and points. Now that's a bit of a lengthy definition, but it's actually very simple. When we break it apart, all that we can see is that it's all about the measurement and relationship about physical objects, physical representation. Now, lines, angles, surfaces, solids, and points, that's everything that is captured in our physical sight. So anything that we can see is under that definition. And it builds up off of the basis of basics. And then we build up into more complex points. So what geometry basically is anything that's in our physical representation. It's about studying those physical representations, deriving formulas, proofs, and finding relationships between them, as well as measuring them through any of our units known, which could be, degrees, our standard units, degrees, inches, grams, all the way to the metric system, to the customer system, and even some special units such as radians. And we'll get into that in our topics. And it's important to know that although all of these items have physical representations, they're abstract concepts. So that's a very major point and part of geometry. Since geometry is a study of all physical objects in front of you and relationships and graphically in equations as well as in measurements. So that's basically what geometry is. But we have to realize that these objects that have physical representation, they're merely abstract concepts. And abstract is, by definition, is existing in thought as an idea, but not having a physical or concrete existence. So I'm going to prove that right here. I'm going to explain that a bit. So say, for example, in geometry, you might think of, say, for example, shapes. Shapes are a very common part of geometry, and they are what structure us to see some abstract concepts. They're very important. So if we see here, this is a cube. A cube is based off of the 2D figure of, the 2D figure of a square, and it's basically a 3D version of a square. You can think of it in that way, but it's also a rectangular prism. But a square has a very unique property, and that is it must have four sides that are of equal length. Now, we all know that although we know exactly what a square is, and yeah, we know the idea of it, the concept of it, we know that it cannot be in physical representation. It cannot exist in real life because there is no such thing as perfectly equivalent lines. Because by nature, we have that flaw that we cannot create perfectly congruent lines, these lines that are exactly the same. So therefore, a square and a cube are non-existent in real life. So it doesn't matter whether it's down to the nearest centimeter or whether it's down to the nearest foot, you're not going to have equal lines. And also that comes to saying with the line itself, which is the basic structure of many objects and shapes in geometry, you're never going to have a straight line. There is no such thing as a straight line because we can only get so fine with our measurements that we're still going to be off to some degree of it. So to some extent. So we're never going to have a straight line in real life, but we do have the abstract concept in the abstract thinking that, a line is a straight figure. It's a straight, it's basically a curvature that's straightened out. So that's something that we know of, but just cannot exist in real life. All right. So that's one of the major challenges of geometry. It's about dealing with the things that aren't necessarily represented in the real life, but somehow have a physical representation for. So let's get on to the next slide. So what are we going to expect in this geometry course? Well, overall, geometry has definitely proven to be challenging, especially from my own personal experiences as I took this course online. It's actually rather challenging a bit because it involves some challenging aspects of geometry that include abstract thinking, memorization, and strenuous computation. And so I'm going to break down what I mean exactly by that. So, first of all, we have abstract thinking. So, abstract thinking is basically what I stated before. It's about visualizing and picturing objects that are represented in words or symbols. So, a lot of people often have trouble with that, but you're going to have to develop that skill as you go along, and you're going to have to visualize these objects. Say, for example, you're going to have to visualize a square. We know that squares aren't necessarily real objects, but we have to have that abstract thinking in which we visualize what would it look like if it were real. Um, and then you have memorization because geometry involves not necessarily just computation, as I say here, because computation in geometry can be quite a hassle because it's a very lengthy process since you're observing such complex measurements and complex objects as well as relationships, and relationships are extremely tough. So you have to be good at computation, and that's where your uh, note taking and your writing out of systems and forms actually really helps you. And then what I mean by memorization is you have lots of formulas in geometry that just can't be memorized or cannot be adapted or taken into your mental note just through skill or practice. It has to be taken through memorization and the form of writing down and note taking. That's why note taking is very important in geometry. And what I mean by and yes, memorization, you also have to memorize proofs because for every single step that you take in geometry, whether or not it's a simple equational step that you take, you actually have to have a proof or a law or a theorem that backs that up. And it has to be in official form. So that's that. And then what are some of the materials that you need for this course? In this course, the materials that you're most likely you should have with you all the time, any of your videos or any of the formats that you're taking through this course. You're going to need a form of note taking, a graphing calculator, and that's only in some lessons that I will specifically tell you you're going to need it in, and of course your own attentive minds, because this is a very this can become a challenging course if you make it challenging for yourself. But if you stay organized, it definitely pays off and stays to your advantage, so that it doesn't feel like you're getting lost or falling behind, and you feel confident in what you're approaching with and what you're approaching. And yes, a form of note taking is very important. And on our website, eCoreAcademy.org, with every single video in any course, and especially geometry, we're going to have notes, formatted notes just for you to go along with every single one of these lesson videos. So you don't necessarily need your own form of note taking, but you are always welcome to do that. And yeah, I would definitely suggest that. And resources used. So as you may all know, I'm still a student right now, and I'm taking all of the information that I'm giving you through this geometry course from my own knowledge. And what that means is anything that I remember, everything that I can recall, all the skills that I've learned, I'm going to be giving that to you. And also, not to say this isn't just a regular, uh, curriculum course that we're giving you. It's all about these high advanced concepts that we're trying to bring you to see in a different level and shine a different light on them. So what that means is we're going to be giving some more abstract and some more difficult concepts, and also some tips and tricks to get beyond them. So and also, of course, this information that I get will also include worksheet and notes from my previous geometry course called Keystone, and that is the Keystone School online. And I'll be using some materials and some resources from there, but everything else is just going to be unique to our organization. And then, what are the course topics? So this is really the meat of the whole entire course. But don't worry. I know it looks like a lot and it sounds like a lot, but we're going to go through this and break it down. And it's not actually too much, but it's actually going to be rather challenging because this is an enrichment level course, and we're trying to heighten your perspective on such topics. So the major topics in our geometry course include basic tools and transformations. So that's basically your basic definitions like lines, points, rays, and the relations, as well as the basic tools such as measurements and radians, items like that. And then you have reasoning and proofs, which is basically how you um, take any geometric concept, relation, or an equation, and you have to back that up with some sort of law, theorem, or postulate. And then you have congruence and constructions, analytic geometry, which you're analyzing through visual perception, lines and triangles, similarity, which is basically similar to congruence, but not. It's a similarity between two shapes. They're not necessarily congruent, but they do have very similar properties and characteristics, which we'll get into more specifically. Area and volume, circles, right triangle trigonometry. Now, this is a very important topic, and this includes, our basic sine, cos, and tan functions, which you might see on calculators, and you might be bewildered by. But we'll break that down and we'll give you the exact definitions by what each and every one of those terms mean. And then you have conic sections and then geometric modeling. And I want to put it out a disclaimer that this isn't going to be exactly what we're going to follow here, but it's definitely a good overview because I might introduce some newer topics or some substitute topics in order to give you the best possible information within the shortest amount of time and being efficient. So that's all, folks. This was eCoreAcademy, our e-learning platform, and this was me, AJay Raj. Please like and subscribe on the video, as stated before, and visit any of our socials and our website link at eCoreAcademy.org, and our socials at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Gmail, and Google Space. So yeah, guys, thank you for watching. It's been AJay Raj, and I'll see you in the next one.